Hi, guys. You're listening to the True Objective podcast with Lauren Rumpler from Objectivist Girl and
Carlos Morales of truthovercomfort.net.
And this podcast is brought to you by the Liberty Beacon. One voice may speak, but many unified voices can roar. And damn it, it's time for we the people to roar.
So the True Objective podcast is about dispelling the myths that plague society and convince people to fall for a tyrannical system. Though this may come off as cynical or negative, this conversation is inherently optimistic due to our belief that individuals can move beyond dogma and liberate themselves through reason and empathy. And we're very excited to actually start off a live show because I don't know if you've done a full-on live show before with Objectivist Girl, but I know it's going to be a different kind of a atmosphere as far as that's concerned. And we did just post on our walls, Facebook walls, the links for that. So if you guys want to join in, just go ahead and dabble with that.
Yeah, please feel free to call in, guys. We love callers.
So what we're going to be discussing today is kind of doublespeak or political language, or as George Orwell said, newspeak. And newspeak is the fictional language in the novel 1984. It's a controlled language created by the totalitarian state as a tool to limit freedom of thought and concepts that pose a threat to the regime, such as freedom, self-expression, individuality, peace, etc. Any form of thought alternative to the party's construct is classified as a thought crime. Now, we haven't necessarily gotten to the point where all expression outside of a particular totalitarian regime are considered thought crime in a legal sense, but there exists a kind of horizontal control or horizontal violence that occurs in peer-to-peer relationships that is similar. What I mean by this is that Big Brother doesn't have to be the government. It can be your fellow man who's saying stuff like, no politics or religious talk, which is such a perfect control mechanism done by individuals who buy into a system after 15,000 hours of public indoctrination that they call education. Now, Lauren, when you think of the term education, what kind of comes to mind?
So I went to private school my whole life. So actually, when I think of education, I think of private school. But when I went to college, I actually went to public school for a while. And I found there to be a lot of socialist rhetoric and a lot of swaying of my opinion. Instead of actually teaching me both sides of the argument, there was a lot of trying to convince me of one side, in particular socialism.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I went to college to get a degree in buzzwords known as sociology, and it was a constant atmosphere that was against kind of rebelling against the social norms, or at least the kind of rebellion that they were suggesting was that instead of having, say, a free market system or one in which individuals' rights are being respected, instead we should have this whole public socialist type system where individuals' rights are being ignored and put in the wayside for the good of the collective. And in the collective, of course, means more money for university professors through state subsidization.
Yeah, they've actually started making free speech locations on campuses, and those are the only spots you're actually allowed to give you're allowed to have freedom of speech. So this is actually becoming more and more of an issue on campuses, and I'm hearing adults say to college students, how can you possibly put up with this? We would never have put up with them putting us in a certain location and taking away our freedom of speech anywhere else. So with every generation, it's getting worse. And campuses are able to just be completely tyrannical about what they allow their students to do nowadays. What do you think, Carlos?
Well, if you think kind of about public school in general, we spend like 8 to 10 hours, 5 days a week with a discordant aggregation of course developing souls and receive our values, preferences, our morality, our view of history, and learning through the lens of a bureaucratic institution that is almost no form of oversight. That's in part due to the fact that a majority of our society has been put through the same motions of irrational, absolutist, and authority-based learning. It's kind of antithetical to critical thought for a society, if critical thinkers would absolutely and completely annihilate the system that we have right now, because it wouldn't hold to the beliefs purely for the unearned positions that they hold, but instead by the merit of their argumentation and consistency in their message. And of course, another issue when it comes to public schooling is the fact that they get money no matter what, right? So it's superficial competition, because they're supposedly private schools, but the vast majority of those are still based off of the Prussian school model that the school is based off of presently. John Holt and everything else all comes from earlier times. So it's still being based off of that inefficient manner of individuals being put behind a desk, 20 different individuals who don't know this teacher. This teacher then tells them exactly what to think. And if you think about how all other technologies have have risen and changed throughout that time, yet we're still in this caveman Prussian mentality. It's horrific. And again, though, it's that false competition.
Right. Actually, I remember when I graduated from college, they had a mandatory graduation test that everyone would take, and it helped them get funding. And so I had to, yeah, I've never told you this story before. So anyway, I had to take this test, and one of the things I said personally to them was, is this mandatory? Because I don't really care if you receive funding. I don't value the education I've gotten, and I've paid for every single bit of it, so I don't feel like I owe you anything. And they told me that I wasn't allowed to leave and that it would screw with my graduation if I didn't complete the test, which is utterly ridiculous because I had to put my own intellect and all the effort that I had gone through to learn things that hadn't been taught to me in class. And I actually only was able to answer those questions because of the fact that I had spent time in my daily life learning those things by myself.
Yeah,
and they're getting funding for that.
No, I mean, it was tens of thousands of dollars that went into my college education. The education in this particular topic is what we're talking about as far as Newspeak is concerned. It was, tens of thousands of dollars, but the vast majority of education that I really got was through, honestly, websites and reading books on my own. I learned about libertarianism and all these other concepts through, Wikipedia. You just click a link and you click a link and you click a link and you go through the Facebook zone, Wikipedia zone, and we just keep on clicking and you figure out, discover all these new things. And that was the price of, I don't know, $40 a month for an internet bill, versus $5,000 per semester in this particular case so that I can get a degree that'll allow me to work for the state. Very, very useful degree as far as that's concerned. And when you think about what education was supposedly set up for, so supposedly the intent of education is to allow for individuals to develop critical thought, rationality, and logic. And what in fact it's really doing is it's circumventing logic and reason and rationality for indoctrination, subservience, and good citizenry, as far as that's concerned. And it's really unfortunate, but if you actually look at the true intent behind schooling, which was kind of set up by a guy named Horace Mann. Now, Horace Mann looked at Prussia, right? Prussia is Germany and Bavaria, right? So their public school system was set out to collectivize individuals and bash out individuality because they believed that the individual was unimportant.
Well, that sounds a little bit like what we're growing into today, right?
Exactly. So Horace Mann took a look at this, and he saw what was happening in regards to how Prussians were being raised, and he's like, you know what? I want a little bit of that. If you remember, of course, what Prussian educational system led to, the Nazis. Oh
my goodness.
It didn't exactly have the best results as far as that concerned. So you have Horace Mann setting this up. And what had occurred was the first public schools that were implemented early 1900s was actually in Massachusetts. Now, in Massachusetts, late 1800s, early 1900s, you can look at this up on John Taylor Gatto's Underground History of Education, the literacy rate among whites was anywhere from 80 to 90%, right?
Mm-hmm.
That actually went down in Massachusetts after only 20 years of public education. It was interesting.
Oh, right.
It was interesting because the reason why they were teaching kids how to read in these particular cases is that the Puritans wanted, of course, the kids to be able to read the Bible, but there was obviously other benefits outside of just reading the Bible. So in Massachusetts, though, they had a revolt in some of the towns, and one of the particular towns, what actually occurred was the local army there actually forced children by gunpoint to go to school so they can indoctrinate them. But of course, they obviously had the best intentions in mind whenever they were doing something like that.
Right.
And now, of course, it's just assumed that you spend 8 hours a day in these desks basically learning nothing. I mean, if you think about it, what is it? Detroit right now has a 40% literacy rate among high school graduates.
Well, that's actually why I've taken up teaching philosophy online, is because philosophy is the only subject in which you learn to think, not just memorize a bunch of stuff. And they're even corrupting that in schools. I took philosophy as a minor, and I didn't learn anything. It was I just memorized a bunch of facts. I didn't actually learn how to think for myself or evaluate anything. And I find that objectivism as a philosophy is one of the only true evaluative tools that I've ever learned in my whole life, which is really sad.
Well,
Because,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
what
objectivism is more than just. So some people just think like objectivism is just kind of like the non-aggression principle, and that's it. It's not actually. It's a well understanding of epistemology based off of Aristotelian thought. So it's understanding axioms and self-evident principles and everything else, and then grasping from there what is and is not a rational statement.
I actually made it 10 minutes without mentioning objectivism. I just want to point that out.
Good job. So essentially, though, what's interesting though is how little the objectivist development of knowledge or understanding of knowledge did not seep its way into either sociology or philosophy, which of course Ayn Rand pretty much stated was going to happen anyway, because the kind of thought absorption and educational learning that's occurring in these schools is not one based on rationality and reason. It's based off of faith-based and ideological thought process where we can never know anything, but trust me. It's a lot of that kind of thing. It's faith-based thinking, which is rather
Right.
unfortunate.
Absolutely.
And they're calling it academics, which is really, really cute name for it.
Academics.
Yeah, and it kind of takes me to this other thought in regards to that, which is another term that is used interchangeably by, Obamatards and everyone else, which is essentially.
I've never heard that term. Obamatards?
Yeah,
that's a thing?
I promise you guys, this is not going to be the Peter Schiff show. But as far as newspeak terms, one of the main ones that's used is this word called competition.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to say it was Obamatards.
No. So competition is something. A competition of the free market in general. Two terms that are regularly used in normal debate, as far as things that are considered bad. So the definition of competition is interaction between organisms, populations, or species in which birth, growth, and death depend on gaining a share of a limited environmental resource.
Right. Absolutely.
And if you notice there, it doesn't sound all that bad, but according to government dogma, competition is an impediment on individual rights and leads to brutality due to evil human nature.
And how is that possible when resources are limited and the only route to gaining them is competition? So how can you say that it's an evil practice when it's absolutely 100% necessary for the survival of a species?
Well, yeah. So scarcity is, of course, it occurs no matter what. I mean, there's scarcity on Earth, which is why the development of individual rights and understanding is absolutely integral and important in understanding.
Right,
that.
because then businesses are able to arise to try and meet to lower the scarcity and meet demand so that we don't have these issues any longer, because they can create new sources of food and different ways of taking care of our society.
Absolutely, and the most fun thing is that is the very fact of the matter that the government says that the oh, you know what? Sorry, but real quick, live show issues. There's a statement that the link is wrong. We need the Hangout link. So I'm going to go.
Interesting.
I'm going to go ahead.
Let's fix that.
I'm going to go ahead and throw them out. But yeah. So basically, the idea though is that the reason why they're saying we need regulations and everything else is that if we do not, basically fix.
That's what I used.
Is that what you used?
Yeah, that's what I used. I asked you.
Son of a gun.
Well, he's doing that. I'm going to tell you really why it is that people are so upset by capitalism. It's actually crony capitalism that most people are thinking of. So the only way to create a true monopoly is through crony capitalism, because when businesses are treated unfairly by the government, that is the leg up that they get, and that's the crony you're looking at. So when businesses are involved in deals with the government through lobbyists and are able to get around laws and unfairly compete with other businesses, because it's not true competition, it's limited competition and it's controlled competition, and that kind of competition only benefits the businesses that are able to pay off the government, and those are the corrupt businesses that you're looking at that are the major issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and sorry, real quick, I'm going to go ahead and throw this link over here.
All right. Right into our Google Hangout.
Yeah, that's what I just did.
Somebody call us and make sure it works.
Okay, okay. All right. Type that in. That should work.
All right.
Okay. That's
And as long as it works, we'll shoot it out to our social network.
okay. So I went ahead and I threw that in there. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, the general idea though is also that the
You
government
want to close. There you go.
is and we got someone in. So the general idea is that the government is preventing any kind of monopoly from occurring, right? Which is a cute notion. And so the government's basically saying that that monopolies are wrong. But of course, the government itself is a monopoly on force, a monopoly on violence, a monopoly on arbitration, a monopoly on every single thing that we would never want a monopoly on in general.
Right.
So we have a listener in named Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Howdy, sir. Did you want to? Excuse me. Okay. Yeah. So Scott, do you have any kind of thoughts in regards to the new speaker that's going on in America right now?
Maybe a form of it. We were talking at lunch the other day how, like, in our engineering department, they have like all they talk about is like green projects and stuff like that. So it's kind of like they're trying to get us in the mindset of we need to think green, rather than a bunch of different ideas. And that was kind of one we were.
Yeah, the think green thing is quite hilarious as far as that's concerned, because the vast majority of things they're talking about of how to live green and everything else is, maybe we should drive a Prius, right? Except for the environmental issues when it comes to a Prius is that the refining that's going on in places like Africa where poor children are basically being thrown in these mines, and then they're refining that in China, throwing that back into Japan, moving it back into California. So by the time that you're done, you basically use the amount of CO2 that would have been used in a Hummer. So.
Right, and that's another way that the government is dispelling inaccurate information in order to sway your purchases. And that is, and this is a source of what most people trust. The government is something that people trust, so when they use false information and spread it that way, people actually trust that information, and they're abusing their
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I don't know, some of those posts you see about like the workbooks kids are doing, like it's just kind of getting you in the mindset that you're working for the system and these are the problems you're going to have to do. So they're like trying to put it in your mind any way they can, which in our case it's the green projects for class or for, I don't know, for elementary kids workbooks or whatever. There's like those comics and stuff that show that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, they're trying to essentially coach the green into us.
Yeah.
I think we have another caller in here.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Thanks.
Yep. See you guys.
See ya.
Hey, Steven, how you doing? What are your kind of thoughts? Wait, here we go. Sorry. Okay, and we're good to go.
New show, Blue.
Sorry, yeah, just trying to figure out this thing just a wee bit, and we got Steven here. Howdy, Steven. How you doing, man? So, do you have any kind of thoughts on this notion of staying green, or just the government basically using these words to manipulate the masses?
I mean, it's basically my thoughts are basically have already been said by you guys. But I mean, going to the public school issue, I mean, it's very clear if you just look at the setup that they have. Even private schools do this because private schools are very subject to government laws. You're a piece of production in a factory. They've got their factory bells that ring to make sure that you're in class at time, and they're trying to produce a product that's intelligent enough to build bridges and to be a good police officer, intelligent enough to figure that stuff out, but not intelligent enough to really think for yourself. I really like what Lauren said about philosophy, how that teaches you to truly think for yourself and to truly think, not just to follow, not just to be smart enough to follow a book, and to just, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm intelligent enough to understand this, so this is what I'll do. And public schools are definitely really erring on the side of not producing self-thinkers, but producing people who obey and listen and have no real individuality.
Yeah, it's like playing red light, green light, in all honesty. So our government has taught us that the red light means stop and the green light means go. And I just, more and more as I watch society, I find these little ticks that they've taught us how to do. And these little pre-programmed ideas. And the green and red light, I notice it now. It's something that upsets me.
So essentially the idea is kind of like George Carlin brought it up where he stated, you should teach your kids how to think, not what to think. And right. School is the exact opposite of that. I mean, Scantron is pretty much the best proof of that. There's no understanding of the trivium, right? There's no grammar, rhetoric, and logic. So that's basically how you're able to do autodidactism in order to kind of teach yourself things so that you can absorb knowledge in a more meaningful way. Instead, as mentioned before, it's kind of this faith or authority-based thinking where you're just supposed to learn things. You're not supposed to learn it for yourself, which is why you never ask the question in school, why do I have to learn this? Now we have...
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you.
We have Robert here.
Stuart.
Oh, Stuart was first. There we go.
Hi, Stuart.
Hi, Stuart. Did you have any kind of views on this?
Well, yeah. I think earlier you're talking about how there's this Orwellian manipulation of language. I think you can see that even in us saying public schools or private schools. I mean, really, what separates what we call the public sector from the private sector? McDonald's is a public place. People go to there. What really characterizes what we call the public sector is that it has force behind it. When the government does things, when it uses violence, we say, well, okay, that's what the government is supposed to do. That's its job. But when people in what we call the private sector act violently, that's illegal, that's a crime, and we call the police on those people. So really, I think saying public schools, private schools, it's misleading. I say it's not the public sector and the private sector, it's the violence.
Stuart, we just lost your mic.
I think what you're trying to say, Stuart, is that there's special people with special powers that get to do special things because they call themselves the government. And they're not any different than normal human beings. They just have been endowed with powers by a small majority of people. And it's also ridiculous.
And it's also a really interesting point that you're bringing up, which is essentially that we are buying into their terminology just as much as everyone else is buying into it, which is fair.
We don't have to.
No, we don't.
We should break free.
Basically, it's owning the terms, right? A equals A. That's the most important thing, is understanding the law of identity, and it's also the beginning of wisdom is kind of understanding terms and everything else. And so you're absolutely right. There is things that are backed by violence and things that are not backed by violence, and generally, whenever we're using words like public, they've been able to convince us that public is synonymous with things that are backed by violence, which is a fantastic way in order to ostracize individuals for ever assuming that we shouldn't have public things, because it makes it sound like, oh, you're just one of those don't tread on me, gun-toting, marijuana-smoking libertarians.
Yeah. We're the crazy. Yeah, we're the crazies.
Yeah,
we're the crazies.
Kind of. The soulless, unempathetic rejection of all that is good libertarians, and that they do a really, really good job. So when I state something like, I think we should get rid of public schools, you want the children to be illiterate?
No.
You want the old to die? It's like, well, no. I don't want those things, which is why I want actual competition in order to be able to breed out a more efficient manner. The thing about everything that's backed by taxes is that we have no idea to know whether or not it's efficient, because there's no pricing mechanism. Without a pricing mechanism, you have no idea what the actual efficiency is and also the legitimate demand. If I had this bread over here and everybody had to buy the bread, you would not know whether or not people actually wanted it because they're being forced into it.
Right. We need to allow free competition. I mean, bottom line, so that we can figure out what supply and demand really is. If we can't figure out what the demand is, we can't supply it. And there's a lot of demand out there that's not getting supplied. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Stuart. We really appreciate it.
Hey, so we have a Robert in here as well, which I first talked to Robert, I think, on voluntary virtues.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had Lauren and you on voluntary virtues, and we had great conversations in both times. Two of my favorite guests to have on.
Yeah. So, did you have any kind of views on this, on political language, doublespeak, and just kind of ideas as far as that's concerned?
Well, we have the obvious ones. You know, the idea that taxation is a different word for extortion, and I mean to say extortion because it's not theft. People say taxation is theft, and they're wrong. It's not theft. It's extortion. It's a violent threat of killing you if you don't give them their money. They don't just come into your place and steal it.
Oh, okay, so theft does not insinuate the fact that there's a violent taking of the money.
Right, right. Theft is actually defined as stealing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know that.
Huh.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
Wow.
extortion.
They've made the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although
It's speaking of doublespeak.
Yeah. But you've got that. You've also got incarceration, which is actually kidnapping. You've got let's see, voting, which is actually choose your ruler, basically. It's you're forced at gunpoint to pick someone who is going to be your slave master, essentially, or not necessarily slave master, but serf lord. But most recently, the thing that caught my eye was a commentary made by an MSNBC host, where let's see, Melissa Harris Perry says, "Your children, we need to get past this idea that." We have to break through our private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families. They belong to the society.
Mm-hmm.
And that's doublespeak, most definitely. That is, they are changing the vernacular so it suits a kinder, more gentle-sounding thing, which instead actually means all your kids belong to us.
Yeah, and that's kind of oh God, I remember that video, and I'll get into more of this on a later show. But yeah, I used to work for Child Protective Services. I was an investigator for them, and I've done a lot of lectures on trying to help out individuals who are having issues with them. And that was the main thing that they always kind of insinuated, was that the children were not owned by the parents. Now, I have a problem with the term ownership as far as children is concerned anyway, but it got creepier though because they stated like categorically that the state, which is this amalgamation, it's not a real thing. It's an abstract concept that is roughly ill-defined, but generally just means a group of individual sons are the true owners of children, and that for the good of society, or excuse me, for the good of the child, which is always the best justification ever for kidnapping a child for very unnecessary reasons like marijuana use. You know, I just realized the fact that just making that statement without explaining a lot before it makes me sound crazy. Anyway, but 85% of removals are
sound crazy.
yeah, 85% of all removals are for something called negligence. Negligence is more likely to be for marijuana use than any real abuse. Anyway, that all children belong to us thing is perfectly fits into the public education thing that we were discussing.
Great. This is actually something that I talk about on Objectivist Girl a lot, is about the fact that you can't own another human life because humans own themselves based on nature. The fact that you are responsible for your own survival means that you own yourself. You are given all negative rights because of that, and that's something you guys should definitely check out on my page.
Yeah, Robert, was there anything else? You seem to have a few other terms here.
No, that was pretty much it. But I mean, if you go through and pick out anything that the government does and says that it does, you know, it says that it passes laws. No, it passes dictates.
Yeah.
It doesn't pass laws. Laws are laws are basically an assessment or a realization of an offense that has a requirement of redress, that someone has been victimized by your action, then a law has been broken. That's what a law is. The idea that saying, well, you can't go faster than 55 on a road, that's not a law. That's a dictate. That terminology is definitely doublespeak. In general, just prisons are I guess that might be, I don't know, that might be incarceration though. That's
Well, prison essentially is just the term that's being used in that particular case. I wouldn't even call that doublespeak necessarily.
yeah, that's not. But incarceration is an incorrect term. Incarceration actually means detainment. Really.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just a nickname for it. And of course, war is mass murder.
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, because political language is designed to make lies sound truthful, so instead of destroying a place, you're liberating it. Instead of debasing the currency, you're securing it. Instead of keeping the poor poor and the rich rich, you're creating a safety net.
Mm-hmm.
And safety net, of course, is my
safety net.
Safety net is, of course, my favorite term.
Okay, so let's go to
ever
Aaron.
used.
Wait, one quick point before you go. There was one term that I thought was really accurate, really appropriate though. When they made the movement in the education department called "No Child Left Behind," it was kind of accurate. They basically said, "All right, well, we're all going to come back here and go walk with them slowly."
Yeah.
Right. Let's hold everybody back so that nobody gets left behind. Right.
Yeah, and well, I guess if you never actually define what behind or forward or anything else is, then you can never really be lying.
Oh,
so, Aaron,
let's not go there.
Aaron Day sent us a crap ton of Newspeak stuff, and I kind of like to talk to him regarding it.
Let's talk to Aaron.
Aaron, how you? Oh, wait. Let's unmute you. I am going to figure all this out soon enough, folks.
Hey, Aaron.
Aaron has actually muted himself.
Yeah, Aaron
so
muted himself.
Maybe we're not going to be talking to Aaron. So let me go ahead and I'm going to throw in some of the things that Aaron was mentioning here. Here are a few of the fun political terms. Collateral damage, which, yeah, it's used by the United States to define an innocent person being murdered in war, undeclared or otherwise, with the defense that they were at the wrong place at the wrong time, which is, and as it states here, could be the term used. Okay, here we go. Anyway, too many things being thrown at me at one time. So essentially, the idea of collateral damage.
Could be the term used by Osama bin Laden to describe why he killed so many Americans on 9/11.
I'm not going to touch that with a 55-foot pole.
Aaron, that's great.
But yeah, essentially the idea though is using the term collateral damage instead of killing innocent children is endearing at best, and of course it's absolutely disgusting. But that's again what political language is used for. I think I actually had a quote regarding Orson Welles on it, and I can't find it. But essentially though, political language is used in order to justify the most egregious acts. Another term that was being used was Patriot Act. Now,
don't even get me started on the freaking Patriot Act.
It's just really funny because
there's nothing patriotic about that.
Well, there is if you define patriot as someone who bends over for the state to be able to ram something in their back.
Our country was founded. I'm going to dispel this myth right now. So our country was founded. Carlos is laughing at me. So this country was founded by a bunch of patriots for America. So American patriotism would be defined as those who want small government. So creating more government intervention into our lives would not be patriotic. So anybody that says that it's patriotism to give your rights to the government clearly has not looked into history or watched 1776, the movie. Which is awesome, by the way, and you should all watch it.
Or maybe they saw how they were treating slaves at the time and thought, you know what, we should do that to everyone. So that was the move, right?
It's a horrible joke.
No, it's a great joke. No, and we can go into the kind of the constitutional thing later because, I mean, really, It's insane. It's argument from authority. Okay, so another fun little doublespeak thing he was mentioning here was
spreading democracy. This should be good.
Ranging from the act of silent regime change to full-scale war against a supposed dictator, right? Which essentially is what it is, right? So you have all these. So democracy. I love the fact that democracy and freedom are used interchangeably in dialogue, whether you're in a sociology class, philosophy class, CNN, anywhere, right? It's always used interchangeably. But you know what 9 out of 10 people agree on in a group? Gang rape. So look, if you have 9 out of 10 people, right, that one who wasn't, well, it was a democratic vote, right? So democracy in and of itself.
Show, guys. Sorry, talking about rape.
Democracy in and of itself has no virtue whatsoever. It's a control by the majority over the minority, which, if you think in science, is exactly not what you want to be doing at all. Just because, say, 80% of people in a room believe 2 + 2 = 65 doesn't make it true. It still equals 4 because...
Right, you're talking about utilitarianism. Mill was wrong, and wrong. Anybody that's utilitarian needs to think about that example that Carlos just gave you. But I'm not going to repeat it because, wow.
No, that's fair enough. I think.
Oh boy.
Do we have Aaron now?
No.
No, the microphone.
Yeah, it won't
no
work.
idea why that's happening.
So the next thing he sent was Land of the Free, the most prosperous and free nation, which housed
more people in its prison system complex.
Yeah.
than any other country, any other nation throughout history.
Oh, yeah, our jails are full of people.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a free country. I would not call America free. And there's a lot of people out there that think that I have constant conversations about this. There are a lot of people out there that think that we're the freest country. And it's funny to me to see that because we are so low on the freedom index. It's ridiculous. Just economically, we're number 46. I'm not really sure where we are in social freedoms, but I'll go with the example of Amsterdam. They're definitely freer than we are.
In certain ways. I can't think about the top of my head, but honestly, whenever you think about the fact that there's, hundreds of laws being passed like every single month, when really the only legitimate laws are ones that are imposing on other individuals, as in, someone that is aggressing upon you or your personal property, you got to think like, why the hell are there hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands? And in certain cases, I bet you we got like 100,000 regulations probably just on whether or not you can sell ice cream. So it's becoming less and less free all the time. And the reason for this is that arbitrary authority, right, is all about creating as many laws as possible so that you never feel as if you know if you're breaking the law or not, right? So
right.
That's illegitimate authority, right?
Did you know that I think you commit like 3 felonies every single time you get up?
Well, okay. There was that John Stossel book. Basically, he was making the case that you break 3 felonies. The average American makes 3 felonies a day, and the average Free State Project individual probably makes about 20.
Yeah, I like that. That was great. We're broadcasting from New Hampshire for anybody that doesn't know.
Manchester.
So anyway, my roommate was actually telling me, Mike Ruff, who's like one of the smartest people I know. He was telling me about a law where you can't go across state lines. A male can't bring a female across state lines, and then she can't have relations with someone across those state lines because he brought her across. That's illegal in the state of New Hampshire.
Wow, that's amazing. I believe in one state it's actually illegal to put underpants on a goat. So, I mean, when we're talking about wickedly silly laws, yeah, there's actually a state where it's civil. See, that's the kind of civil disobedience we need in Keene, folks.
The next show should be about
putting underpants on
laws.
goats.
No, it should be about silly laws.
I was hoping I could totally do an hour on putting underpants on animals and how dressing up animals as humans is probably the funniest thing you can do. That and monkeys smoking.
We'll put up some pictures on the True Objective website of some animals in clothes.
Yeah, I'm totally for this. I think that's what
I bet you I can get Aaron to put some clothes on Churchill.
Yeah, no.
Right, Aaron?
We're gonna rename this show pants on animals. That's and monkey smoking.
I can't believe this is happening.
So there's another fun word that is used. Let's go dark real quick, shall we? Eminent threat.
Careful.
Eminent threat. Okay, so the term eminent threat was really being used right after 9/11 to be able to justify, droning people or anything else. Essentially, it was classified as anyone who can be considered an eminent threat. It's okay for the president and Congress to use force upon them, which is how they're justifying violence on a normal occasion. Now, according to eminent threat, if I had, say, a phone call with someone who may or may not have done something illegal, I could be considered enough of an eminent threat that it's okay for them to kill me. And the NDAA, doubles down on that, and on the fact that you no longer even need a jury in order to go to jail or be in prison for a specific amount of time. And as far as that's concerned, which is absolutely catastrophic. And I'm not a constitutionalist guy, right? Because I'm more of a don't tread on me kind of guy, as in non-aggression principle, which is associated with self-ownership or everything else. We'll do rights another time. But
Self-ownership. Yeah. Okay.
But essentially, though, a threat that is real, imagined, speculated, or contrived by the king and his court that could take place now, soon, days, weeks, years, or decades, or never, is essentially what an eminent threat, the real definition of eminent threat according to the government, is.
Ooh, corporate personhood. That's a good one. Let's do that one. So, rewriting of the Bill of Rights to serve corporate interests as opposed to individual interest. Since corporations are people, they are still serving the people. No, corporations are not people. Corporations are made of people. So that's just silly. So.
Yeah, no. The corporation thing is interesting though, but it allows for stocks and all the other fun stuff. I would definitely want to get someone way more intelligent than me to
because everything has to be complicated in this country instead of just simplifying everything.
No, you can't just like open up a business and sell stuff.
That would be silly.
Yeah, no.
It would be silly to allow people to actually supply the demand in this country. That would be awful, right, guy?
No, there was I may or may not have been at this activity at some other place in which they wanted to do like simple civil disobedience to show how silly all the stuff is, right? So
that was my favorite way that you've ever pled the fifth.
Me and another person, right? May or may not have happened. I give him $1. He gives me a beer. Okay, and then he gives me that $1 back. I give him a beer.
This is my favorite place.
And we just broke about 2 different felonies just by doing that simple action.
Absolutely.
Which should show you.
Every Sunday.
Yeah, at some place, maybe or not on Sunday.
I'll tell you what, guys. If you come visit us at the Free State Project, we'll take you there.
Yeah. But it's essentially the idea is that felonies are so easily broken on a day-to-day occasion because of the obstructive laws that are being occurring. Oh, and a message from Stuart again. Remember when someone says public sector, say, you mean the evil, violent sector. And if that person asks in confusion or indignation, what do you mean by that? Tell the person smiley face. Very confused. But I do like the point he did bring up in regards to public sector versus private sector, which is a very important thing for us to understand, which is that we are all capable of being manipulated by other individuals, which is why we need to constantly act as well as we can with reason and intelligence and logic in order to decipher fact from fiction, which is kind of what the show, which is what the True Objective is all about.
That's the True Objective. Dispelling myths in our society.
Let me keep talking there.
It's just because I've got the sexy voice. So let's see what else is on your list of.
Oh, we have conspiracy theory, which was a term created by the government, according to the documents of the black helicopters, which are coming around us right now. The NWO is going to be getting us soon.
Where's Luke Radowski when you need him?
Yeah. No. Well, Luke's a totally rational person. Anyway, Alex Jones. But no,
the government just turns him into an irrational person.
Yeah. Essentially, though, the idea of conspiracy theory, though, is that individuals conspire in order to create something, and then a theory is based around that, which is exactly what 9/11 was. Now, here's the thing.
Yeah, did you see how Jon Stewart reacted to people on his show, the 9/11 truthers on his show?
No, what I mean,
Oh my
what I
God.
mean is that even if it was Al Qaeda, which did 9/11, that is still a conspiracy because a group of Muslim extremists conspired for it to occur. So whether you believe the official story of 9/11 or I don't know, pick your flavor of conspiracy theory, they're all conspiracy theories because individuals are conspiring to do something against us.
Awesome.
And-
So, what did you want to say, Stuart? We got Stuart.
Well, you guys are talking about how the government the statists are using all these Orwellian word tricks. But I think there's hope. There are cases where I think statists have used language in ways to benefit themselves before, and it has backfired on them. For instance, in the 1800s, that's how the words communism and socialism started out. They said, we're communists. We want to live on a commune. We're for the community. Or we're socialists, meaning we're social. If you're not a socialist, you are, by definition, not social. And their epithet was capitalist. That term was coined by socialists like Werner Sombart. They said, if you're a capitalist, it means you're for capital, as in money and factory equipment. You prioritize capital above human beings, whereas we are socialists because we are social. And for a long time, that got a lot of traction. But eventually, people became disillusioned with communism, with socialism, and just them using these pretty words wasn't able to sustain their positive reputation. And they used words like progressive. They stole liberal from us, really. But just because they call themselves social or communal or liberal or progressive, it doesn't mean they can maintain a positive reputation. And I think that even today, people don't think the word capitalist means something good, back in the 1800s, it was a much more insulting epithet. And nowadays, even people like Paul Krugman will get offended if you say he's a socialist and not a capitalist. When Bill O'Reilly said to Paul Krugman, "You're a socialist," Krugman said, "That's slander." And I think for a long time in Europe in the 1800s, it was unthinkable that people would think that socialist is an insult and capitalist is praise.
Huh.
So I think there's hope. I think even though we still use these Orwellian word tricks, it doesn't mean that all those stigmata will stick.
That's really interesting.
Well,
I didn't
yeah,
know that.
so yeah, when it comes to political labels, it's fun, right? Because they're political concepts, right? And concepts are shorthand ways of explaining the entities which make it up. So the most important thing about a concept is for it to be logically consistent. So if you say a forest is a lot of trees, right? And then you call something a forest, which is a whole bunch of, I don't know, balloons, you're obviously misconstruing the concept in general. The problem that occurs is whenever those concepts start to have more meaning than what the entities that actually make it up. So in certain cases, society is a really good way of doing this, right? So they'll say you must sacrifice your needs for the good of society. Well, the reason why individuals interact within society is for their own self-interest. So if the good of society is antithetical to their own self-interest, then it is acting in an antithetical nature to the term from the very get-go. And so when we're using words like communism, so as he was bringing up, commune, not so bad. Socialism, being social, not so bad. Capitalism, capital, not so bad. The problem is that those terms, those concepts, then take a life of their own.
They get a stigma.
Yeah, it's the plate
Right.
tectonic, the Plato's concept kind of thing. There are perfect concepts, yada yada, which is just bleh.
I guess it makes sense once you examine the root of these words that they probably started out with such simple meanings. It'd be interesting to study the history of these words and how exactly they have developed, like to look at the exact progression. I wonder if there are books written on such things. I feel like there must.
Oh, Fernand Braudel. Please excuse my pronunciation. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but there's a French historian named Fernand Braudel, Braudel, who has this 3-volume history on capitalism, and he talks about how the terms socialism and capitalism started out.
Yeah, and of course,
Thank you, Stuart. That's really helpful.
And
I'm
if
going
you-
to check
and-
those out.
and if you think about socialism and capitalism now, how they're being just like thrown around as if they are pure in the way that they're acting right now is absolutely insane. So they'll go, oh well, America is a capitalist economy, right? Even though there's an insanely, even though there is an, okay, sorry, just read something on the side and then it always just kills you. Even though
We're
capitalism
getting in trouble on our
is
first show.
incredibly highly regulated, and there is no real competition in the actual sense, in that there is a violent agency which is preventing other individuals from being able to join into the market. That is antithetical to the idea of real free market competition. And if you look at the 10 points, let me look this up, and we got about 10 minutes here, but I totally want to hit this up real quick. 10 points of communism.
And then I want to talk about terrorism. I think it's a really important.
We'll see if we can hit this. So, according to the Communist Manifesto, written by our well-loved proletariat friend Karl Marx, who never actually worked in a factory, who had a slave for a maid, and then he impregnated her, and then said she wasn't allowed to do anything, and he never paid her any money. According to him, a successful communist government has this.
In case you didn't catch that, that was Carlos calling him a hypocrite.
Abolition of property and land and application of all rents of land to public purposes. Now that hasn't completely occurred, although whenever you think of the very fact that everywhere has property taxes, and if you're not giving in a certain amount of money, it's all stolen. Essentially, all of our property is borrowed. Next, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. We got one of those. Abolition of all right to inheritance. So the government's kind of working on that through this fun thing called the death tax. Confiscation of all property of all immigrants and rebels. That's occurred on occasion. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and exclusive monopoly. Go Federal Reserve!
Woo! We're going to do a whole episode on the Federal Reserve.
Centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. That's happened to a bit of I mean, whenever you think of the FCC and a number of other organizations, that's definitely at least highly regulated by it. Equal liability of labor, establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. USDA, everyone.
Yep.
Oh, and Monsanto Inc., which is highly subsidized by the state.
And Monsanto's something that is big right now.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard about Monsanto, you should definitely look it up.
Okay, and another here, extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, the bringing of cultivation of wastelands, and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. Here's the cute thing, is that he believed that soil would somehow be better and improved if we had a monopolistic state essentially dealing with agriculture. And of course, if you actually take a look at what's occurred due to the farm subsidization that's occurring in places like Monsanto, which is really a terrorist organization, they are destroying the topsoil through monocultural farming, which is degrading the soil to the point where we may not have food coming from those areas ever again within the next 50 years.
The quality of our soil is drastically deteriorated over the years since the government has gotten into that sector. I like the last one, though. Free education for all children in public schools, abolition of children's factory labor in present form, combination with education and industrial protection.
I love the fact that child labor is not, it's not considered child labor if you're forcing kids to sit down for 8 hours a day, foiling out scantrons, not gaining any really form of literacy,
and
being
they take
stuck,
away your phones. That's the worst part.
being stuck with individuals your exact same age in an unnatural manner, all to essentially make everyone conform to the semi-industrial prospects that they are going to be having later in life due to the very, very well-regulated market, which prevents an easy chance of being able to join and start an actual, say, business. And, you know, we definitely want to get into terrorism on the next episode because we do have, I think, 6 minutes left. Thank you all very much for listening on that end. But I do want to kind of finish up on this education thing. Presently within the United States, we're thrusting millions of kids to go through this thing, which is the literacy rates are actually declining the more and more money it's been put up there. And if you think, the general responses are there's not enough money, which isn't true. There's more money being spent on per student right now than any other time in history. In places like New York, they're spending 18 G's a year per student, right, in public school, which is quite an expensive tuition if
It's
you really think about it.
unnecessary, to say the least.
Yeah, if you really think about how much money that is, it's unspeakable. But of course, with the teachers' unions and everything else, you have an absurd amount of inefficiency as far as the market is concerned at all. And also, there comes another issue, which is the mixture of public education, pharmaceutical companies, and the government in general. So children who speak out against anything in general are considered to have something called oppositional defiant disorder, right? Which is it's slave speak. It is oppositional defiant disorder has to be my favorite of all doublespeak, because it means that you're opposing something that is illegitimate, right? So you're opposing the teacher in this particular case. You're opposing the authority, which they have no rightful authority over you whatsoever. And because of that, we must drug you. We must drug you with Adderall, Depakote, Zyprexa, Strattera, Provigil, Ritalin. We can go on and on and on and on for drugs.
Yeah, I actually want to get into that real fast. It's really important, guys, that we consider not drugging our children, because honestly, it's pacifying their real personalities, and it's really important that people are free to express themselves in our society, because the limit of self-expression is growing in our society and is becoming less and less okay and permissible for people to express themselves. And I think that is a crime, because that right there is exactly how we're going to get rid of free speech, capitalism, and other such things. Don't you think, Carlos?
Yeah, essentially. So what they're doing is they're zombifying these kids so that you end up having, especially whenever you're adding in.
It's like.
Whoa.
It's like Soma.
Yeah, essentially, and it's really causing an issue as far as that's concerned.
If you read Brave New World, it's like Soma, and if you haven't, Soma is a drug that the society takes to keep everybody happy, because they're creating these people in glass jars, and they're just a standard person, and so it's this perfect society full of minions that take Soma. So nobody actually has any real feelings besides complete and utter happiness. And it's a great book.
Yeah, and of course, and what public schooling does in its best way possible is to integrate political language into our normal line of speaking, so that we do use words like you're a conspiracy theorist, you're anti-war, therefore you're not being pragmatic. Pragmatic, of course, is the cutest one of all, because whenever you think of pragmatism, is that its root is Greek for a fact. So libertarians, objectivists, and all other folks who take a logical eye towards government understand the fact that government requires violence for its existence, that its monopolistic nature tends to slow down and even destroy progress, and from a deontological view, is inherently antithetical to self-ownership. Yet, when those facts are brought up, individuals state that we need to be pragmatic, which is very, very cute. Because in all realistic, being realistic involves actually understanding reality, and the reality of the fact of the matter is that literacy rates are going down, the debt is continuing to go up and up and up, while technological progress is still occurring, because the one market right now, which is not heavily regulated, is actually the IT world, computers, things like that, which are booming upwards. So while your iPhone's getting cheaper and cheaper, healthcare is getting more and more expensive because it's incredibly highly regulated. And we're going to get all into more of that. But
you know what amazes me, Carlos?
What's that?
Is that people love their iPhones, but they hate capitalism.
Yeah, it's cute. Whenever they're doing this Occupy protest with their iPhones. So, and we'll be leaving that for another show. But for right now, that's going to be it. Thank you very much for listening. We will have a working website and everything up very, very soon, and all of this will be shooting through Liberty Beacon. So thank them for that. You can find more of my stuff at truthovercomfort.net.
And you can find more of my stuff through Objectivist Girl. Look me up on Facebook. That's where I funnel all my stuff through. Or you can go to objectivistgirl.com. We really appreciate you guys tuning in and participating in our very first episode. And we hope you really liked it. And we hope you'll go like the group. And hopefully we'll put some cute animals in close up.
Absolutely.
Bye, guys.